kind of daggers that Lennon would throw at McCartney was the idea that he was Muzak. He would make music that was basic and simplistic, and it kind of irked Paul. I don't think that's true, but maybe it was kind of harkening back to this period where Lennon was slightly ahead, and that's something that he had over him, maybe. Early on in an artist's career, I think it's normal for you to use covers and be inspired by other artists. And I think Beatles did a lot of that in the early music that they created, the early albums. But I'm not so interested in the covers that they did in the albums. I want to hear what these guys came up with by themselves. And what I did in the last video was compare and contrast two early tracks of Lennon and McCartney, both from the same album. This is from that album once again. This is with the Beatles. And I think it was really interesting to hear the differences even at this very early stage between the two songwriters. So we'll do the same thing here again. This first track is the track that was written by John Lennon. It's called All I've Got to Do. Here we go. All I've Got to Do by the Beatles.
Whenever I want you around, yeah, all I gotta do is call you on the phone and you come running home. Yeah, that's all I gotta do. And when I wanna kiss you, yeah.
That melody right there is so fantastic. I've heard rumors that Lennon didn't love his own voice, like he couldn't almost hear himself record. There, let's go back to hear that. Here we go.
And when I wanna kiss you, yeah, all I gotta do is whisper in your ear the words you long to hear, and I'll be kissing you.
I don't know what it is. I just have a natural kind of naturally feel myself liking Lennon's musical arrangements, the melodies that he chooses, the lyrics that he creates more. I don't know what it is. He has a sense of maturity to his voice, the things that he chooses to write about, and the arrangements that he's creating that I really love. Maybe it is because Lennon, if you listen about his story, he went through quite a lot as a young person, and maybe that allowed that maturity to seep in through his music. But I always find myself more connected to his writing early on. Let's back it up a little and go again. Here we go. Back it up a good 5 seconds.
Here, and I'll be kissing you. And the same goes for me. Whenever you want me at all, I'll be here, yes I will. Whenever you call, you just gotta call on me, yeah. You just gotta call on me. And when
His voice,
I wanna kiss you, yeah, all I gotta do is call you on the phone and you come running home. Yeah, that's all I gotta do. And the same goes for me. Whenever you want me at all, I'll be here, so I will.
The jump between the first album and the second album, I think, is very clear to me. As my ear gets more attuned to their music, especially, I hear it so much more. It's a maturity. They're more sophisticated in the melodies that they're creating. Also, shout out to Ringo on the drums. It's sometimes missed out on. I just love it. There's something about it that is very, I don't know, I guess Ringo-esque is the word.
For me, whenever you want me at all,
ever present.
Yes, I will. Whenever you call, you just gotta call on me, yeah. You just gotta call on me. Oh, you just gotta call on me.
Great track. I think it's one of my favorites I've heard so far from their catalog, from these early tracks that I've heard. Maybe that'll surprise a couple of them. I just absolutely loved it. I love the message of it as well. The idea of like, I'll be there for you. You just gotta you can depend on me. And the genius behind making young girls fall in love with the Beatles. I think a lot of commenters have been talking about that. I mentioned that early on. It's a type of genius. Yes, it's not the most sophisticated writing yet, but they're certainly going out there with a mission to make these young girls, these young people love their music and grow a fan base, make a hit. That's a type of brilliance, and Lennon has it on point at this particular time. I think the both of them do. But let's compare it to the next track. Here we go. So this is the McCartney track of the two songs I'm listening to today. It was actually recorded during the very famous Please Please Me album session, but was not included in that album, instead put in this album here. And once again, let's see if we can catch any early differences between these two songwriters. This is Hold Me Tight by the Beatles.
It feels so right now, hold me tight. Tell me I'm the only one, and then I might never be the lonely one. So hold me tight, tonight, 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 tonight. It's you.
I could totally see how this was recorded in that first album session. It sounds like one of those songs, and I think it's fantastic to compare this to the first song we just heard, because you can hear the jump. You can hear how they have matured, how the sounds have become more sophisticated. It's a great example to use, I think.
Hold me tight. Let me go on loving you tonight, tonight. Making love to only you. So hold me tight, tonight, 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 tonight. It's you. Don't know what it means to hold you tight. Being here alone tonight with you. It feels so right now. Hold me tight.
Okay, so this is like the perfect example of like the very first album tracks, so the very early aspects of Beatles. You have this call and response harmonies that happen. The lead singer will say something, two people harmonize in the background. I think it's two voices. Now, again, we're trying to compare the two songwriters. If you ask me, at this point in time with the Beatles, Lennon was ahead of McCartney, for sure. I think there's not a better example than to hear this and then to hear the song before it. There's a jump, there's a leap between the two. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh. Obviously, McCartney is brilliant. Obviously, he goes without saying. He wrote brilliant music during this time and after, but there's a difference between the two. I just feel like Lennon is a little bit more ahead, and he has the edginess aspect, the darkness in his writing and his sounds that he creates, I think, at this point in time.
Tell me I'm the only one, and then I might never be the lonely one. So hold me tight, tonight, 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 tonight. It's you. Don't know what it means to hold you tight. Being here alone tonight with you. It feels so right, so hold me tight. Let me go on loving you tonight, tonight. Making love to only you. So hold me tight, tonight, tonight, tonight. It's you.
It's a cool song. but it's simplistic, it's basic. It sounds like basic is kind of a bit too far. Simplistic, I should say. It's more simple than the song we heard earlier in its effects and feelings that it creates in you. Sounds like the first album. Now, what I learned a little bit from covering the earlier stuff is learning about after the breakup, Lennon and McCartney having disagreements, and one of the kind of daggers that Lennon would throw at McCartney was the idea that he was Muzak. He would make music that was basic and simplistic, and it kind of irked Paul. I don't think that's true, but maybe it was kind of harkening back to this period where Lennon was slightly ahead, and that's something that he had over him, maybe. Because out of the two, maybe there's going to be a lot of McCartney fans that chime up and say, I think you're wrong, and that's completely fine. Between the two, I prefer Lennon. There's just something about his music, especially the last two songs we heard from this album. There was definitely more of a darker side to Lennon's writing. But regardless, we're very early on. I'm kind of, it's interesting for me to kind of create this in this video. All in all, I like to hear the progression of the artists, and so that's been very cool to see. There's definitely a jump between first album, second album, and I think that's it. I think this is all the tracks I'm going to cover from this second album. The next tracks you should hear are from A Hard Day's Night. So I'll catch you then.